Good morning, ladies and gentlemen from London, England. I do hope I'm audible, and my gratitude to the Indic Researchers Forum for inviting me today to present my findings to you. Cabinet Mission Plan 1946, Balkanization with Good Intentions. My all too brief disposition this morning as a historian and Orientalist is to offer correctives to the history of partition propounded during the past 3 decades, particularly following the 1985 publication of Ayesha Jalal's The Sole Spokesperson, Jinnah, the Muslim League and the Demand for Pakistan. This monograph has become something of a talismanic text for many across the 1947 divide. Jalal's meticulous analysis is questionable in its interpretations. After all, such is the nature of scholarship. But I must declare that my approach is that of one who is trained in Iranian studies with an ancillary interest in Pakistan studies. So as an outsider today to your forum, I read some of the events during the closing days of the Raj differently from Indians and Pakistanis. I'm concerned with challenging the thesis or the so-called original sin of partition that has been leveled against Nehru particularly and the Indian National Congress generally by not only Jalal, but also Maulana Azad's unexpunged version of India Wins Freedom, published in 1988, 30 years after his death, and Homi Silvai's Partition of India, Legend and Reality, a year later, 1989. It has become fashionable for both the Indian right and left, as well as the Pakistani metropolitan liberal set, for distinct reasons, to castigate Nehru for the dismemberment of the subcontinent. What the present-day Hindu right conveniently sidesteps is that the Congress agreed to partition at the behest of the Hindu Mahasabha, which was, in my opinion, prescient in forcing this decision to secure the lives and security of those Hindus who would have been left perilously within the Pakistan that Jinnah secured in August 1947. The RSS and its fan base today must, if anything, acknowledge the efforts of the Hindu Mahasabha and Congress in saving Hindus and non-Muslims who would fall under the shadow of Pakistan's exclusionary othering politics that became only too evident following Jinnah's passing. Look no further than Pakistan's proto-constitution, the Objectives Resolution, Qaraardad-e-Maqasid, March 1949, which was vociferously opposed by all 10 non-Muslims in its fledgling Constituent Assembly, as every one of their proposed amendments was rejected by that Muslim majority-strong 75-member assembly. It was writing on the wall of what lay in the future. Jinnah was not around, who at once, in a moment of indignation, snapped and stated that I will not be the Governor General, but Protector General of Pakistan's minorities. But this is getting ahead. Let us get back to British India and 1946. With the best of intentions, Prime Minister Attlee's 3 wise men or magi, as they were dubbed, Indian Secretary of State Lord Pethick Lawrence, Board of Trade Presidents Sir Stafford Cripps, and First Lord of the Admiralty A.V. Alexander, arrived in New Delhi via Karachi on 23rd March 1946 and departed, having failed in delivering its objective on 29th June 1946. On 16 June 1946, an interim government and a confederal 3-tier India with 2 sub-federations was envisaged, Hindustan and Pakistan with distinct legislatures, and below which would be the provinces and princely states which would join the sub-federations, Section A predominantly Hindu India, Section B today's Pakistan, and Section C present-day Bangladesh, erstwhile East Pakistan. Attlee's magi fervently sought, quote, and I quote, to arrive at a position which Jinnah can regard as conceding Pakistan and Congress can regard as not conceding it, close quote. The All India Muslim League, after much toing and froing, formally accepted the Cabinet Mission Plan on 6 June 1946 in a resolution which declared that, quote, the basis and foundation for Pakistan are inherent in the mission's plan by virtue of the compulsory grouping of the 6 Muslim provinces in sections B and C, is willing to cooperate with the constitution-making machinery proposed in the scheme outlined by the mission, in the hope that it would ultimately result in the establishment of a completely sovereign Pakistan, close quote. It has become an article of faith for left liberals, but also those on the right, as I pointed out at the outset, to blame Nehru for torpedoing that last chance of preserving a united India when the Congress rejected the plan on 22nd June because he stated that the INC, the International Congress, was neither bound nor committed to the plan. Not only Gandhi and Nehru, but also the Congress Working Committee had legitimate objections to it, which cannot be exhaustively detailed here, save a few salient points. Nehru has received opprobrium for stating, quote, "We will take an unfettered approach to the Constituent Assembly," and that compulsory zoning of provinces was unrealistic. Vallabhbhai Patel allegedly called it Nehru's, quote, "temporary act of insanity," and it was lamented as well by Maulana Azad. But was Nehru really that imprudent, ladies and gentlemen? Consider the facts. If one peruses the mission plan document where para 19, section 8 clearly delineates, and I quote, "As soon as the new constitutional arrangements have come into operation, it shall be open to any province to elect to come out of any group in which it has been placed. Such a decision shall be taken by the legislature of the province after the first general election under the new constitution," close quote. This was 16th May 1946, when the plan was formally announced to the world. On 22nd May 1946, Jinnah released an official statement on the plan on behalf of the Muslim League, and I quote, "Our proposal that the Pakistan group should have a right to secede from the Union after an initial period of 10 years, although the Congress has no serious objection to it, has been omitted by the plan, and now we are only limited to a reconsideration of terms of the Union Constitution after an initial period of 10 years, close quote. So, in effect, Brexit 1957. Patel declared this was tantamount to partition, but Jinnah was holding out a threat to the Congress to be equitable towards the Muslim minority, and that, just like their divorce laws, there must also be constitutional remedies in place to end an arrangement if it did not work out, quote, in the light of experience. Professor Ishaq Ahmed unequivocally points this out in his 2020 study on Jinnah. Jalal, however, in 1985, apologetically pleaded for Jinnah. But she does note revealingly in her 1980 interviews with League heavyweights alive still then, such as Mumtaz Doltana and Shaukat Hayat, who told her Jinnah did not seek partition, but held this Damoclean sword over the Congress and India's head as a device to keep it in check. Doltana told her, and I quote, "These 10 years would last forever and never end." To appease those League hardliners, Jinnah declared in his 6th June 1946 statement, which I cited just now, acceptance of the mission plan, which, of course, in the fullness of time, was a pathway to Pakistan. So how then, ladies and gentlemen, was India to proceed with building a strong organic center, never mind embark on planning and development with this threat of secession forever looming on the horizon? Counterfactuals are not counterintuitive. Nobody except Dr. Jal Patel knew Jinnah was dying and surviving, as he told him sometime in 1945 at his consulting rooms down by Flora Fountain, Bombay, in his Bombay's 4th district, that he was, quote, living on whiskey, willpower, and cigarettes. That would all be hunky-dory once Jinnah, the stumbling block, was out of the way, was unanticipated by anyone. And who was to tell? True, Jalal has a point when she notes dryly that Muslims, once in the Constituent Assembly, including Leaguers, would inevitably display that Indian talent for crossing the floor and would vindicate the Congress as an inclusive secular party, which would, of course, unravel the League. But naturally, Jinnah had anticipated it, which explains his insistence on compulsory grouping of the provinces to keep in check his own recalcitrant Muslims, especially in the majority provinces, Bengal and Punjab, which he was opposed to dividing and wanted intact in his Pakistans with its non-Muslims, so that would compel a Congress, namely Section A, to be fair-minded to its own Muslim minorities. Abul Kalam Azad sharply critiqued Jinnah in India Wins Freedom that mutual hostage-taking theory was hardly the way how states conducted themselves in the international arena. And how ominous was Nehru when he declared his objection to the mission plan at a press conference 10th July 1946, stating, quote, "There is a good deal of feeling against any grouping with the Punjab, both in the Northwest Frontier Province and Sindh, for economic and other reasons." That is to say, even a Muslim leaguer in Sindh dislikes the idea of grouping with the Punjab because he fears that the Punjab will dominate Sindh, the Punjab being a dominant party in that group and more aggressive and advanced in some ways. Apart from the imposed discipline from the Muslim League, both in the frontier and in the Sindh, the people are unanimously against grouping because both these provinces are afraid of being swamped by the Punjab, close quote. 80 years on, ladies and gentlemen, I shall turn to this topic in my examination of CPEC and Balochistan in tomorrow's proceedings of this conference. Jinnah was also averse to a center with full financial powers for taxation, but dependent on the provinces who would disperse doles to it. He was also opposed to the center having the ability to impose taxes on the provinces or princely states. Any earmarked budget for defense of the Confederation would have to be a bare minimum, according to him, by the plan agreed by both Hindustan and Pakistan. More, if sought, was to be approved only by the provincial legislatures. Nehru's remarks in that very press conference, which I cited, make clear his antipathy when he rightly observed, quote, "If anyone suggests that some kind of contributions or doles are going to be given by the provinces or states, it is sheer bunkum. No central government carries on work in doles." Close quote. And on loans, tariffs, currency, and credit, he queried, quote, "Who is going to do it if not the center? You cannot allow each unit or province to carry on a separate type of credit and foreign policy," close quote. Jinnah, incidentally, also demanded that the princely states, all 565, should be sovereign too, like the provinces, in deciding all matters except those pared down to the bare minimum and delegated to the center. Finally, as someone more familiar with Middle East studies, which is my field, I would also highlight how India, with an overwhelming Muslim majority population, totaling now to almost 500 million, would have been inextricably dragged into every Islamic crisis, be it the Afghan-Soviet War, 1979 to 89, Iran-Iraq War, 1980 to 1988, Houthi conflict, where we saw Pakistan roundly abused by Kuwait for not aiding Saudi Arabia in 2015, to say nothing of ISIS and Al-Qaeda recruits from the subcontinent, where the largest concentration of Muslims universally would have been domiciled. And what of India's Jewish population and its sentiments for Israel? Would they be run roughshod to appease a Muslim minority? 500 million is no minority, but actually just below the combined population of today's Caribbean and South America, Latin American subcontinent. A prescient British official adumbrated this in a minute to the Chiefs of Staff meeting 12th April 1946, which I just pointed out, and sent to the then Viceroy, Field Marshal Lord Wavell, what I just pointed out, namely, West Pakistan Section B was likely to identify itself with other Muslim countries, which might lead it into wars of no concern to Hindustan. Close quote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It was wonderful listening to a view that we normally do not listen or get to listen in India.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya, for the simple reason, and that was my aim this morning, is the Hindu Mahasabha rightly asked the Congress to wield the whip in Bengal and Punjab. So why is the RSS today abusing Nehru for the so-called breakup of Akhand Bharat and this, that, and the other nonsense, when it was the Hindu Mahasabha, which is the ancestor in one sense genetically of the RSS, which correctly asked for partition to secure the rights of non-Muslim minorities. That is the hypocrisy and, quite frankly, the stupidity of it all, which is what I wanted to drive home in today's lecture.
Yeah, that was a great learning for most of us out here, I think, because we have seen partition in a very, very one-sided way, and we have been presented with views in a very linear way. So whenever we get to know this kind of a point of view, where we, what I would say is, a view that is from outside, and it raises more questions. What's happening right now? Because we see a lot of comments, a lot of social media activity with a particular, in a very particular direction. And of course, with the recent event happening in Waghmar, we find that emotions are high, but emotions do not drive nations. We have to think rationally. So that rationality comes from brainstorming, this kind of debates where we are able to raise questions, raise issues, understand the implications of decisions taken then and what we are facing right now. So with that,
sorry, I don't want to impose on you and the listeners who want to come in, but this is the reason also people sometimes very naively ask, why did Indira Gandhi not absorb East Pakistan in 1971? Well, there was no need for her to do so because we don't want problems from abroad to come into India. And quite frankly, it was, as she put it correctly and very diplomatically to the world stage, East Bengal's problems are for East Bengal to decide. And also in 1971, the Congress was honoring what it mentioned to London at the time of departure. Certain units are seceding out of the Union of India. Should they fail to survive, this is important, Professor Bhattacharya, especially for the younger generation, should they fail to survive, these units, the provinces in question, they cannot be expected to return back to the fold of the Union of India, individually speaking. So say a Punjab here or a Sindh here or a East Bengal here, they have to all return back into the Indian Union as en masse or not at all, which is why what Indira Gandhi's position was quite correct and literalistic, that we cannot absorb East Bengal back into the Union of India, and quite frankly not, because India did not have hegemonic ambitions to dominate. It was a completely free country, which vindicates Nixon's and others' point that India was going to take over, but nothing of the sort happened. And we can see it 50 years on in Bangladesh's very robust, very feisty policies when it does stand up to India and holds its own, and quite rightly so. It's a sovereign state, and it has every right to, hold its own turf and stand up to whether India or to Pakistan, to anyone else. But that also I want to answer, because this naive nonsense consistently does the rounds. Why did India not absorb it? There was no need for India to do it legally or for any other reasons as such. Thank you, and I'll stop here.